Hello again, everyone. Welcome to Your Fave Film Critic, the podcast hosted and produced and starring me, your favorite film critic, Tom Griffin. I hope this is episode 8, so I mean, if I have not won you over by now, if I am not your favorite film critic at this juncture, I don't really know what to. I mean, is it Armand? What's the deal? Is it Manzal or Sights? Like, who is it? I have to level up again, but we've got a lot to talk about this week. As always, we're sticking to the same format. We're going to start off talking about some stuff in the news, and then mostly just talking about like some upcoming movies I'm excited about, and then we'll have a short interlude once again where I talk about some pro wrestling, and then I'll talk about the 4 movies I watched this week. I only watched 4. I was going to watch more, but I was like, this is kind of overkill. I'm not going to be able to fit this all into the pod like I did last week. And then a handful of questions at the end, the usual thing. So let's get into it, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that we had a couple of big trailers drop over the last week. We had the trailer for Michael Fassbender in The Killer, the new David Fincher movie that is being put out by Netflix. I think it hits Netflix on November 10th. It'll be out in limited release theatrically for a couple of weeks, a few weeks before that. There wasn't an exact date yet, I don't believe. And this is Fincher's first movie since Mank, which a lot of you did not like. In point of fact, a lot of you fucking hated it. But I was a pretty big fan of Mank. I actually really liked it. I haven't revisited it since like the morning it hit Netflix, and I made like a video about it, and I was like very gaga for it. So maybe I don't know if it holds up or not, but I liked it. But this looks way more like what we want from Fincher. The trailer actually has like a really strong resemblance, tone-wise and pacing-wise, to the feel-bad movie of Christmas, 2011's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo remake that Fincher did. And that iconic trailer set to Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross's cover of Led Zeppelin's Immigrant Song with Karen O vocals. Like that, if you guys remember when that trailer first hit, it was like, yo, this is like, I hated The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the original, when it came out. It was very popular at the theater I worked at the time. But I just didn't get it. It didn't do it for me. I couldn't understand the appeal, really. I wasn't crazy about it. Later, I revisited it, and it's actually not a bad movie, but I much preferred Fincher's version. So, seeing this, it's Michael Fassbender plays a contract killer. It's definitely got like Melville vibes, you know what I mean? Like kind of like La Samurai vibes, but with like Fincher's, you know, kind of like cold, calculating visuals, and Fassbender playing this like what I assume to be like kind of like a Zen-like hitman who, you know, breaks all of his rules and stuff. I don't know the full plot. It's based on some like European graphic novel. It is Fincher reuniting with Andrew Kevin Walker, who wrote Seven and did a lot of uncredited rewrite work on Fight Club, and then like nothing in the last like 20 years. I'm extremely excited for this movie. Like, I watched the trailer, I don't know, like 30 fucking times. Like the day it dropped, I was so stoked. I'm still stoked. And then like a few days later, we got the trailer for Michael Mann's Ferrari, which Neon is putting out, his Ferrari biopic, where Adam Driver is playing Ferrari, the Ferrari guy. Penelope Cruz is playing his wife, like his long-suffering wife, and then Shailene Woodley is playing his like mistress or something. And I was just having a conversation with my friend Cody about Shailene Woodley. We're like, what the fuck's she been doing? The only thing in my mind that she didn't even do anything, was just the Please Don't Destroy sketch, the Shailene Woodley simulator game, you know? So like when she popped up in the trailer, I was like, Woodley mode! So I've been really excited for Ferrari, first Michael Mann movie since Black Hat. You know, hopefully not his last. Hopefully there's time for Heat 2, but it just looks really good. It looks like it's going to be kind of more in the vein of like Ali, where like it's more about the inside, or it's more like a drama, and there's a lot less like action-y stuff, although the car shit looks like really good. And you know, this is hot on the heels of the news that the Killers of the Flower Moon, the new Martin Scorsese picture that Apple is putting out, of all people, It just had its limited release date of early October moved upward to like October 20th, I believe. And it's just going to go wide. It's just going to go everywhere. And it's going to be available on IMAX screens. So there's like one small thing that's like nice about Dune 2 getting pushed back is we're all going to get the new Scorsese and we're all going to get it at the same time, which is pretty rad. All the New York, LA people who are used to getting movies 2 weeks early are like bummed, but you know what? Deal with it. And I saw someone point out, like, man, like we had new movies from Michael Mann, Fincher, and Scorsese all pretty close to each other. And like, there's probably another year where this has happened. You know what I mean? I didn't really go look it up, but 1995, Seven, Heat, and Casino all in the same year. All bangers, all like unassailable classics. So I'm just excited for these movies. It's really good that we have a few like really heavy hitter filmmakers coming out with new work before the end of the year, because like otherwise a lot of the mainstream releases are looking kind of dire. There's one other trailer I wanted to talk about, which is the trailer for Saltburn. It's the new Emerald Fennell movie, or Fennell, I don't know how people say your last name. I was not the biggest fan of Promising Young Woman. There are things I loved about the movie, and there are things that I thought were just like awful. And I thought she was like a more interesting director than a writer. I thought that a lot of the problems with that movie were just like in the script. So I was like, I hope she makes more movies. I just hope she like co-writes them with someone or something. She's back with a new picture. It's called Saltburn, which is named after like this like rich English person estate, I guess. And it's a very different vibe than the Promising Young Woman trailer, which is nice, I guess. Barry Keoghan plays like a guy who goes to a school in England, and he's like poor, I guess, and he becomes friends with Jacob Elordi's character, who was like rich and extremely attractive, and he goes to spend the summer at Saltburn, like his like family's estate, and it's kind of all about like this poor kid hanging out with these rich kids, becoming obsessed with the way they live, and it seems like it could be like really interesting. I mean, I think Emerald Fennell's one of the like many people who are popular storytellers in England who are that way because their families come from money and they were able to go to like the best schools and have like the most dialed in networking wise. Like something about that like BBC nepotism is like, it's that pure shit. You know, it's like when people show videos of like people dancing at discos and like the coke was real pure back then. Like the nepotism in the BBC world is like real raw shit, because like here there could be nepotism because it's like, yeah, my dad was on The Facts of Life or something. There it's like, oh yeah, we know the queen, so I want to make a show about this, and they just let you know. But the two things I wanted to point out from the trailer, that's not true. I have the one thing to point out from the trailer. Jacob Elordi looks so good in this movie trailer, and like I've always thought he was just weird looking on Euphoria, and maybe a lot of that was just because his character is so distasteful. Like I just didn't get the appeal. But something about, I don't know if it's like his hair in this one or what, but it's just powerful. It's a powerful look. Like the poster is it's that provocative. It's getting the people going, I think. So I'm down to watch a movie about like the Joker having a crush on Nate from Euphoria or whatever. You know, it could be cool. But I just, man, like Promising Young Woman really kind of like made me worried about like, is everything she makes going to be this fucking off? I don't know. We'll find out. But I'm just really excited about those other three movies, man. Like especially The Killer. Like I'm excited for Ferrari. I love Michael Mann with my life. And I love Adam Driver. He's just, if you guys haven't seen it, man, Adam Driver, I guess at, I think it's Venice, whatever film festival they just debuted Ferrari at, got asked about why he was there promoting it while SAG was on strike, and he talked about how, you know, they have an exemption because Neon and A24 agreed to SAG and WGA's like demands, and he's like, if these two companies can, why the fuck can't Netflix? It was a really good little speech he gave. He really is like one of the best of his generation, like arguably maybe the best. So it was like really kind of cool to see. I fuck with Adam Driver a ton. But of the three, I'm the most excited for The Killer. Just something about it, like, it just has that, like, Fincher doesn't fuck around. Also, Soderbergh earlier in the year or last year, I guess, whenever he put out, Steven Soderbergh, the director, puts out this thing every year of like everything he watched and read and like did. And he watches like more movies than we do. And then he like makes like 3 movies a year. I don't get it. I don't know how he does it, but he, on his list, he had The Killer, Fincher The Killer, listed like 4 times in the same week. And someone asked him at an interview, and he was like, yeah, well, Fincher sent me a cut, and I loved it so much, I kept rewatching it the whole week, just looking for stuff to steal. It's so good. And that got me excited. Like, I love their professional relationship as they watch each other's movies and give notes and stuff. And I love the idea of, like, it impressing Soderbergh to that point that he's like, I gotta rip this motherfucker off. Like, I feel like that's like, flattery is imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. Is that I'm so bad at remembering, like, phrases and shit. I don't know why, but whatever. A lot of good movies coming out the rest of this year. You know what I mean? Some big stuff I'm stoked for. Other smaller stuff I'm not stoked for. And also, spooky season's coming up soon. I got to get to making my Hooptober list. My boy Kyle already put his together. I was like, motherfucker, it is August. It is August, and you already have your Hooptober list put together. I don't know if you guys aren't aware, Hooptober is like an annual challenge on Letterboxd to like watch a bunch of horror movies in October. But the people that organized it every year pick like a set of rules for like what you're gonna watch, and it's like you have to include a movie from every decade, like a movie from a different country. Like there's all these different like rules, and you kind of put together like a really cool watch list. And like I want to say last year was the first time I did it successfully. Every other time I've made a Hooptober list, I get 3 days in October and I go, fuck this, I'm gonna watch whatever pops up on Prime that has like a knife in the fucking poster. Like I just watch whatever. I tend to, when I'm in the mood to watch horror movies, I just watch like whatever is on streaming, good or bad. Like I don't care. But last year I think I had a pretty good actual, like I got covered all my bases. So yeah, we got that coming up. We got some good fall movies, like the Oscar contender type stuff is actually like genuine heavy hitters this year. And then we got, Spooky Month is coming up. I fucking love Spooky Month. And my birthday's next month, the end of September. I'm turning the age of the number of dicks Dante's ex sucked in Clerks. So that's cool. And I'm thinking about, I don't know, I'm talking about this in the pod, like I'm like, oh, hey, keep your eyes peeled. But I'm thinking about leading into my birthday week, making like the big marathon list of like childhood comfort movies. Like just watching movies I loved when I was a kid the whole week. And I've put together a bit of a list. I got to add more stuff to it. I just feel like it's going to be really cool. Like I feel like my inner child would really like to revisit some of these movies that were very important to me when I was younger and kind of help ground me going into the new year, the new birth year. I don't know. So that's kind of neat. Anyway, most of the news section is going to be me talking about some wrestling. So once again, as I say every week that I talk about wrestling, if you're not into this, I'll make sure the timestamps show you how to skip over it because that's only fair. I love pro wrestling, and I honestly would make way more or any really like pro wrestling content for the channel or for whatever. But it's really hard to do for the channel. It's really hard to do like video essay type content with wrestling because maybe the best thing I've ever made for the channel is like literally not up anymore because it got copyright stricken to fucking hell and I just gave up on it. And I just don't want to go through that experience again of making something I'm like really passionate about and really believe in. And then like randomly in the middle of the night, it'll just be like, oh, this fucking clip you used to Bruno Sammartino in 1974 violates our shit, so fuck you. Like I just don't, that's what holds me back from doing more wrestling stuff. But I love wrestling. And also I've kind of been able to keep wrestling as like my fun thing. Like, I don't have any like things to write about it and stuff. It's just, this is what I watch for fun. Some people like football, I like wrestling. And this past weekend, AEW All Elite Wrestling, which is sort of like the number 2 wrestling promotion on earth. They've only existed for like 4 years or so. It began basically as like a company, like it tended to be sort of like a pointed alternative to the WWE. Like Vince McMahon's WWE, now co-owned by like Endeavor and stuff, has been like the uncontested biggest wrestling promotion on earth for like 20 years, basically. In 2001, Vince bought WCW, like his biggest competition, for like pennies on the dollar. And then that was it. He just became his own competition for like the rest of the time. And for better or for worse, from different people's perspectives. But through that time, there's been plenty of alternatives. There's been like wrestling all over the country, a lot of very thriving indie promotions and stuff. But around 2019, I guess this was 2018, there was this event called All In. And it was promoted by Cody Rhodes, who was currently a WWE wrestler, and the Young Bucks, like an independent at the time tag team. And the idea behind it was basically like someone dared them or said like, you know, those guys aren't real draws, like box office draws, like they don't really draw money. They couldn't sell out a 10,000 seat arena. You know what I mean? Because like no one outside the WWE had done that in like almost 20 years. So they did it to prove everybody wrong. It sold out very fast. It was this big independent show with all these like misfits and like indie darlings and stuff. And it was like a big deal. I mean, about half the show was literally unwatchable, but the parts that were good were like impressive. And it was like a cool moment. It was like a cool watershed moment. And a lot of the people that were involved with that then linked up with Tony Khan, the son of billionaire Shad Khan? Is that his dad's name? I almost said Shao Kahn. That is not his father's name. Anyway, Tony Khan, he owns the Jacksonville Jaguars, and his dad does. I don't know how it works. And it's like a British team he owns too, but I don't remember, you know, European football team names. And, you know, he's like essentially like a billionaire. He got together with these guys and started All Elite Wrestling. Like the core group of guys that helped promote the show outside of Cody Rhodes called themselves the Elite. It was the Bucks, Kenny Omega, and this guy Adam Page. So like most of them got figured into launching the new company. Kenny Omega, the Bucks, and Cody Rhodes got executive vice president roles in corporate. And it was like, we're going to change everything. We're going to revolutionize wrestling. And it was they did some cool shit. Like I don't super hate on AEW. I kind of hate their fan base. Like a lot of their fan base to me is like very cult-like, particularly on Twitter. Like if you're into wrestling and you're only on the wrestling internet, like on Facebook maybe, you're going to see a lot of toxic, crazy WWE fans and people like who are just unhinged. And I feel like that's like a portion of the audience. A lot of WWE's audience is more casual or just regular people who watch wrestling sometimes. AEW's audience is like majority dialed in internet fans. And they just experience pro wrestling differently. Like they obsess over different things. And pro wrestling is a niche interest to begin with. So AEW essentially caters to a niche within that niche of like very diehard, like dialed in people. And it's a very different, you know, product. And as much as there's been like moments where it felt like they were doing like really big things, there's been a lot of just problems, like behind the scenes type stuff of just like just bad like culture, like bad like politics and stuff. A lot of young guys that don't want to learn from veterans, like a lot of stuff that has, I think, hindered the product from like taking off and really becoming like a bigger thing than it is. But all summer, the naysayers have had to been told to shut the fuck up because they decided to do like a sequel to All In, now under AEW's banner, at Wembley Stadium. And they sold it out, or they didn't sell it out, or whatever. They sold like 81,000 tickets, which allegedly, as far as people seem to be concerned, is the highest attendance of a wrestling event like of all time, not counting WCW and New Japan's Collision in Korea, because like the Korean government made everybody go to that. They didn't pay, and it was like 100 and something thousand people. That's different, I guess. It's not the highest like gate. Like they didn't make the most money. Like WWE still has that record. Like I think All In made like 10 million, let's say, or something. And then I think WrestleMania 32 made like 18 million. And they had like nearly the same amount of people. The big thing is WWE's recorded attendance was like 101,000 people for that event, but they always juke their numbers to be how many people were in the arena. So that includes like the concessionaires and security guards and shit. It's in like comps. So for the longest time, the like accepted paid number for WrestleMania 32, I think Dave Meltzer, who's like the only person who gives a shit about this type of stuff, estimated it to be like 93,000 people or something. And then this year, when AEW decided they were going to do All In, Brandon Thurston, who's like also one of the most foremost reporters of like pro wrestling economic type stuff, financial news, whatever, decided to go off of the number from whatever the like Arlington County Police had for like the number of people that went through the turnstile, and it was like 80,000 people. And then like the week after, AEW sold like 80,500 or something. It's like exactly over that number. So like there's a part of me that doesn't fully believe that they really broke the record. There's this thing where like anything WWE does, fans are like, well, we don't know for sure because they lie. But then it was like, we're going to take Tony Khan's numbers at face value. He would never lie. He's the good billionaire. So anyway, I watched the show Sunday and it was okay. It was pretty solid. I'm not going to lie. Like I actually, compared to most AEW pay-per-views that I watch, like I actually liked a good number of the matches. I didn't love anything on the show, but there's stuff I liked. It was like pretty decent, you know? I thought it was like solid. It didn't feel big. It didn't feel like there was 80,000 people there. Like I'm not saying there weren't. I'm just saying that the spectacle, the scale, you know, it really did feel kind of like an episode of their weekly program Dynamite, but in front of more people. Like the acoustics weren't there. It didn't sound loud like there were a lot of people. Like this, it just, I've been to a WrestleMania, you know what I mean? Like there's a feeling about it, a bigness that WWE is very, I mean, they've been doing this for like 30, almost 40 years. WrestleMania is an event, and All In is like, it just didn't feel big and special. And part of that is just Tony Khan. I mean, they sold so many tickets without a card. So that meant that Tony Khan didn't feel compelled to book a really good card. Typically, if you want to like, the way wrestling booking works is like you book a big main event to draw money for the house. And then you build that undercard stuff to kind of help, you know, sell it, right? If you already sell like 60,000 tickets with no card, you have no incentive to make like a good card. And I thought that All In's card was like not great. There was some stuff that was good and some stuff that was bad, whatever. And then they also, this upcoming Sunday, have another event called All Out, which they've been doing every year around like Labor Day weekend in Chicago. And they have a star, CM Punk, who, even if you're not really big into wrestling, you might be aware of. You might know who CM Punk is. And he came to AEW in like 2021. It was a huge deal. He left WWE very unceremoniously, like 7 or 8 years ago. Retired from wrestling, got to the UFC, got the shit beat out of him in every fight he fought, retired from the UFC, and then it was just doing nothing. And he came back to AEW and it was a huge deal. Like they sold out the United Center in Chicago on the like whisper campaign that he was returning. They didn't even advertise it, and then he showed up and it was crazy, whatever. Cut a big promo. He became this like folk hero for these people. Like a lot of AEW's audience purports themselves to be like real wrestling fans who like wrestling outside of WWE. But like the vast majority of them are all like newcomers to pro wrestling, and a lot of them basically got into wrestling when CM Punk was very popular in 2011. And then just became disaffected when he was no longer the top guy in the company. So it's like a lot of these people are not, they didn't like watch Punk in Ring of Honor like I did when I was in high school. Or I didn't, you know, they didn't go to indie shows when they were younger and stuff. Like they got into wrestling through WWE, hated it, and then got into other alternatives later, and then became very like entitled about it. Like we're the real wrestling fans. And I'm not into gatekeeping and stuff, but like the number of times I've had a wrestling fan on the internet who I know got into wrestling after me, like try to tell me something about like, oh, you only watch WWE, you don't know. And I'm like, I've watched like fucking everything. I am like one of the most, I'm very dialed in. You're just an idiot, whatever. Anyway, CM Punk, he was a big draw for the company at first because he was like a huge attraction. Like he hadn't wrestled in like years, and he cuts a great promo. His body's kind of beaten up. He's a little bit older, so his matches aren't quite what they used to be. But like, you know, he still had it. Last year, All Out weekend, they had this thing that was called Brawl Out, which is basically Punk got into an altercation in the locker room after a big pay-per-view with the Young Bucks, who are technically like his bosses because they have corporate roles in the promotion, because he went in front of a live mic at a post-show press conference and just talked a lot of shit about like everybody there. It's a long thing to recount, but it all stems from like a younger wrestler, Adam Page, going off script on the mic and saying something about Punk that Punk didn't like, and like they didn't handle it, and he just went off in front of this room of reporters next to the owner, just talking mad shit about the company, while eating like pastries from some shop in Chicago. And it was like, if you've ever seen it, just look up like CM Punk All Out Scrum. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my entire fucking life. But one of the things he says, it was in his assessment of working there, was essentially that like he's trying to help run a promotion that draws money and expands and functions nationally on live television. And the other guys, the other EVPs, they come from the indies, and like they never wanted this to be a big deal. They just wanted to be able to get paid well to wrestle with their friends and like have fun. He had a very damning indictment of them saying that like, you know, I'm trying to run a real business and these guys still think they're in Reseda, because a lot of them used to wrestle for a California-based indie promotion, Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, and most of their shows came out of like a Legion Hall in Reseda, California, and there was a very small space. And it was a hot program. They had great shows and really launched a lot of people's careers and stuff. But like, you can't run a national promotion with weekly live television on cable that same way. It's a very different beast, you know? So he got a fight with those guys. Allegedly, one of his stooges, Ace Steel, bit Kenny Omega. His dog got injured. A lot of crazy shit happened. Someone threw a chair at Nick Jackson, one of the Young Bucks' heads. It was like allegedly a really bad thing. But like Punk got hurt and injured, so like they never had to fully really suspend him because he was going to be out anyway, like while he was injured. And then for a long time it seemed like he was not going to come back because like the stuff was not good. And he came back this year. Not only did he come back, but TNT and TBS, like Warner is the TV deal for this company, gave him a new show on Saturday called Collision. And he basically has like creative control on the show, and he books the guys he gets along with. So there's just this one show where everyone's on, and then on Saturday nights they have this other show that's just Punk and like 9 guys he's cool with every week. It's very interesting to me. And I mean, personally, I like the vibe of that show a little more than Dynamite, like for me, but yeah, a thing happened leading like a few weeks ago where there's a wrestler who used to wrestle under the name Jungle Boy, but he goes by Jack Perry. It's Beverly Hills 90210, deceased actor Luke Perry's son, Jack Perry. He's a young guy, pretty inexperienced, not like the smartest. He had wanted to do a spot on an episode of Collision with a wrestler named Hook, who's the son of pro wrestling legend Taz, where he would go through like real glass, and everyone involved was like, we're not going to let you do that. You're going to cut yourself up. It's going to be really bad. It's not worth it. We don't have any gimmicked glass, you know? And he wanted to do it. I guess Punk, everyone was like, Punk, you got to go talk to him. He's not listening to anybody else. And Punk was like, look, man, we don't do that here on Saturday nights. You can do that shit on the B show on Wednesday on Dynamite. Whatever. And like kind of admonished him for it. Cut to All In in front of 81,000 people. On the pre-show, the main event of the pre-show was Jack Perry and Hook, and they have a segment of the match where they're fighting on top of a limousine, and Hook does a suplex, like an underhook suplex, to Jack Perry through the limo's windshield. Like it's a real windshield. It's not gimmicked. And he gets off of the car, he's like bleeding, and he turns to the camera and goes, real glass, cry me a river. Instead of like selling the fact that he just went through glass, whatever. A lot of these young guys are just fucking idiots. But he said that shit to like provoke Punk, I guess. To be like, yeah, fuck you. I did it. The next match after this on the card, the opening match of All In, was Punk versus a wrestler named Samoa Joe. So Punk, I guess, got into it with Jack Perry. There's multiple accounts, but the one thing they all have in common is that Punk put him in a chokehold and knocked over a bunch of monitors onto the billionaire owner of the company. Samoa Joe had to break the fight up. Punk tried to quit like a minute before they had to go open the show, and Joe talked him into going out there. They actually had, in my opinion, the match of the night. I thought it was a really good match, considering they're both like old and beat up and shit. It was good. And then I guess after that, Punk has to go home, you know, because this is the second time he's gotten a physical altercation with his coworkers. So the thing is, now Tony Khan has to suspend him, or should suspend him, right? Like, you can't come to work and like choke your coworkers, even if they're dicks. But he's the anchor of the show the upcoming Sunday. Like, it's bad enough that they chose to run 2 pay-per-view events this close to each other, but you sell Chicago on CM Punk's name. A lot of people bought tickets to the show thinking he'd main event it, and now he's potentially not going to be on it. And the whole thing to me is like people are all fighting about it, and a lot of fans on the internet are like, maybe it's work, maybe it's part of the storyline. That's what they said last year. It was not. It's just these people. It's just a rough environment. What it boils down to is people think that Punk is a Cancer. He's not. He's a Scorpio. He has a Scorpio stellium. He's like so much Scorpio in that man's chart. It's hilarious. But they think that he leaves. Like if he finally just goes home, AEW will go back to like quote unquote normal. It'll be fine. But like he's just exposing things that are like already wrong with the promotion. Do you know what I mean? Like he's not destroying everything or he's making it worse, but he's like, when he leaves, it's not going to just get better suddenly. It's like deeper than that. And the thing that is like all week, AEW fans have just been like, yeah, like biggest wrestling show of all time. Personally, I think that wrestling is a business that's about making money. So I feel like a higher gate is a bigger deal than having the most heads. Like if you sold all your tickets for like $30 or whatever, I'm not surprised you sold more of them anyway. But their first TV show back, like the ratings were continue to be kind of low. All their US shows have lower attendance than they were in all those places last year. Like other than this big event, it's not like rising the tide for the rest of the company, the rest of the business. And I think and people are mad that like this is the second year in a row that the biggest event of the year has been overshadowed by CM Punk backstage drama. And I had to explain all that stuff, and I'm sorry, just to get to this point, which is that what is wrong with AEW is that there are no compelling, dramatic stories being told on their programming that are as interesting as the beef people have with their coworkers backstage. So, pro wrestling's supposed to be about heels and baby faces, bad guys and good guys. There's a guy you root for and there's a guy you root against. And a lot of modern wrestling always wants to go in this other direction of like everyone's gray area, everyone's like a tweener. And I fundamentally think that's not really good for pro wrestling at all. I think it really takes away from what makes it work, what makes it psychologically work for people. Why it doesn't matter that it's like predetermined, because like the core battle of good versus bad is so like intrinsic to storytelling and the pro wrestling storytelling. And Jim Cornette, if you don't, I'm not going to explain who Jim Cornette is, but Jim Cornette used to be a big manager in pro wrestling, and then he moved on to being like a booker and like an owner of promotions and stuff. Now he's just a podcaster, and he's kind of crazy, but he's really funny. He's kind of a bad person, but I don't know. He cracks me up. Cornette hates the company, and like most of his audience does too. So he just shits on it on his podcast all the time. And him and his co-host Brian Last really dialed in this past week to talking about how every storyline in AEW is about friendship in some way, and not in a good way. This is actually a talking point that my friend Cyrus, co-host of the War Report on RNC Radio, he's been beating this drum for a very long time. I think Corny listens to the War Report. If you break down every current feud or angle going on AEW's television, every one of it surrounds friendship in some way. Like someone being like, you used to be my friend, now you're not my friend, and like all this different stuff. And in some ways it's cool, because I like stories about friendship. You guys know that's like one of my favorite things. Friendship is very important to me. In a pro wrestling context, having a 2-hour show where every 10 minutes there's a different squabble among friends, there's no variety. There's no like stakes really. People care less about the titles they're supposed to be striving for than just like petty grievances with their friends, and like people switch sides and turn on each other all the time. It's very tedious. And I think it pales in comparison to the very real animus of their backstage drama of like guys, in wrestling, essentially in the past, there's been situations where two guys really fucking hate each other. They've just used it. Like even if they hate each other in real life, they've just gone out and had matches and like been professional and taken care of each other, like and like been safe, but used that animus to like sell tickets. Like people know like, oh, this feels more real. Like they really don't fuck with each other, and all the guys here that have this beef with each other, it's like HR got involved and like they won't work together. So all the fans, not even all the fans, but a lot of people want to see these guys settle it in the ring, quote unquote, because that's like kind of what wrestling storylines usually are. It's a bunch of hot-headed guys in the background having beef with each other, taking it out in the ring. But because AEW is mostly chock full of like nerds and guys that all get along, none of them want to, like, if they don't get along with someone, they don't want to work with them. And I mean, it's hard to like believe that someone will still take care of you in the ring and be safe with you. So I kind of get it. But like every other major feud in the history of wrestling that involved two guys who fucking wanted to kill each other, they all still did business. They all still had matches. It's like, we're going to make some money. So everyone that says that it's not fair that CM Punk is like overshadowing the product, you should really ask yourself why the product is so fucking easy to overshadow. You know what I mean? Like if All In was really the biggest wrestling event of all time, like they've been touting it as, a guy getting in a fight with one of his coworkers, a guy from the pre-show and a guy from the opening match of the show, that shouldn't take away from everything. But it has, because it's just more interesting. Reading all the like gossipy dirt sheet updates about so-and-so has an account, we heard that this happened and this happened, all of that, way more entertaining than everything that happened on Dynamite this week. I watched Dynamite and I was like, nothing on here is as interesting as like this Punk backstage stuff. You know what I mean? And it's I don't know. I used to write a column for Dead Shirt back in the day called In This Very Ring, and it was me trying to write like a primer every week or whatever for people that didn't get wrestling to understand it. And I think I did some good work back then. I'm not sure. But one of the things I talked about was like modern wrestling fans know too much about the business. They know all these things are fake, and they know how they think they know how a lot of it works. And as a result, a lot of times they're more interested in what's going on backstage than on the show. This has been a real problem for WWE for years. But over the last year or two, the WWE has been really hot. They've been like really, really hot as a product. I find that like all of the backstage stories about their stuff, they're all very boring. They're all very like little nitpicky stuff. Like, we heard this and this happened, but it's not like, none of them pick up the same level of traction. And I think it's because the booking is better and the stories are better. The stories that are happening on WWE television, for the most part, it's not perfect. There's a lot of stuff that's just still not all that good. Is so good that I don't care about what's going on backstage, really. You know what I mean? I don't really care about the gossip and tea. I want to see what's going on with Roman Reigns. I want to see what's going on with Rhea Ripley. I want to see what's going on with Bianca Belair. I love these stars and I want to see what's happening with them. Whereas in AEW, I don't really feel like there's anybody to root for or against or anything. I just don't care, you know? So I don't know. I think, you know, it's like certain movies, the stories of how they were produced end up overshadowing the movies themselves. And it's usually because the movie's not good. If the movie was good, people wouldn't care about like, I heard like, Don't Worry Darling, that movie fucking sucks. All the stories about how it was made and how Olivia Wilde would go missing on set and stuff, more interesting than that movie. You know what I mean? This is like that. CM Punk is like Olivia Wilde in this situation. I don't know who Harry Styles is. But yeah. End of wrestling rant. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what I watched this week. I watched 4 movies. I watched 3 of them on the weekend and one last night. On the weekend, I think it was a Sunday, I watched Shiva Baby was the first one I watched. The Emma Seligman movie with America's sweetheart, Rachel Sennett, stealing Hebrew and Sapphic valor in this movie. She is not gay or Jewish to my knowledge, but she's like good at pretending to be both, so she just kind of gets a pass. She plays a young girl who has to go to a funeral, and she ends up getting there, and this guy that her parents want to introduce her to is her sugar daddy. And it's like the whole movie takes place at the funeral. It's like this very claustrophobic comedy, kind of feels like a thriller, kind of has like Uncut Gems, Panic Attack vibes. Feels a little bit like visually a little bit like a Cassavetes film, or in the vein of Cassavetes, specifically Woody Allen's Husbands and Wives. I know we don't fuck with Woody Allen around here, but I used to when I was a teenager, and Husbands and Wives is one of my favorite movies at the time. Very similar vibes to this. Her dad in the movie is Cy Abelman from Serious Man, and Molly Parker from season 2 of The Bear and other stuff is in it as like her ex. And I thought it was really funny, really well made. It's like an 80-minute movie. I watched it in anticipation of, I want to see Bottoms next week, Emma's next movie with Ava DeBerry and Rachel Sennett and Marshawn Lynch somehow, about a bunch of lesbian girls in high school start a fight club. Like, that's so up my alley. But Shiva Baby is really, really solid. I feel like I should have watched it the year it came out, but I don't know. I just never got around to it. at the time, like all I knew Rachel Sennett from was like being like on Twitter and being like attractive and like being kind of like a alt it girl or something. But then I saw her in Bodies, 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 and she's really good in that. And I saw her on The Idol, which is a trash show, as you all know, but she was good in that too. And I was like, this girl's cooking. She's putting some shit together. So now I'm on board. Huge Sennett fan now. And I'm really glad that she's getting her flowers. Shiva Baby's on Max right now. It's streaming on Max. You should check it out. Then I wanted to watch another Albert Pyun movie after last week, after watching Nemesis. So I watched Radioactive Dreams, which is only available on YouTube. It's not like in print anymore. It's not streaming anywhere. I had to watch a not so great rip on the YouTube. And what a weird fucking movie. I don't even know if I can actually recount it to you guys. It's from, I want to say 1985, I think is the year it came out. And it's about like this post-apocalyptic future. So it looks kind of like a cheap Mad Max type world, but there's these two guys who were raised in a basement bunker for years, like they've never seen the outside, and they're obsessed with like jazz and like swing music and like film noir. So their names are Philip and Marlowe, and they get out of the underground, they break out of it, and they just dress like detectives and they dance and they do all this crazy shit, and they're driving through this post-apocalyptic world, and it's just about these two guys who want to be private eyes trying to figure out like a conspiracy with like lizard people and gangs and stuff. It is so weird. And I think I'm going to watch a lot more Albert Pyun movies the rest of this year, because I'm like, between Nemesis and this, I'm like, this man was operating on a very different fucking wavelength. It is a very, very special movie. I didn't like it quite as much as Nemesis. It's not quite as cool. It's a little bit more, it's just so weird. Like my favorite thing about the movie, in addition to just like it feels, you know, when you were like younger or if you're young now and you come up with like movie ideas, a lot of times you're just like shoving a bunch of really weird shit that only matters to you into one thing. Like Quentin Tarantino made like a career out of doing that, like repeatedly, right? Wes Anderson too, I guess. But Albert Pyun, his version of doing that is so much more weird. Like, it's so much cooler. Like, I don't know that I would have ever come up with like two guys who grow up obsessed with film noir in a Mad Max world, and then with like this weird glam rock soundtrack where like every song sounds like it could have been on a really good episode of Gem and the Holograms. Like, if you can I don't even know how you find the soundtrack to Radioactive Dreams, but like every scene had a new awesome song. Is all like just pure unadulterated 80s. Like, you can just feel the hairspray wafting onto your flesh, the guitars, and like the kind of like snarl in the lyrics and the vocals and I don't know, man. It was so fucking cool. Like, I don't know how else to describe it. I was just like, this movie is like really fucking cool. I don't know if I can call it good. Nemesis was like weird, but I was like, no, I can comfortably call this good. I don't know that I can comfortably call Radioactive Dreams good. But as we'll talk about with another movie later, I'm not always, maybe good isn't always most important. Sometimes interesting is good enough. So Radioactive Dreams, just search it on YouTube. There's like 2 links to it. They both look like shit. You'll make do. Sorry, it's not in 4K. But yeah, if you're interested, it's definitely worth checking out for the free on the tube. And then I rewatched a movie. I don't know if you guys saw all the stuff for the McDonald's As Seen in meal, that I guess is technically a tie-in to Marvel's season 2 of Loki, but it's like a broader thing of like homaging every movie that's ever really prominently featured McDonald's. And when I first saw it, I thought it was fake, because one of the key movies listed on the list of movies was Wong Kar-wai's Fallen Angels, which does have prominent scenes at a McDonald's. But I was like, oh, it's got to be a bit. It's a pretty good bit. It was not a bit. Reader, it was not a bit. I was able to go into a McDonald's and procure a medium sweet teacup that had Wong Kar-wai sandwiched on it between Space Jam and a Run DMC song. And it's like the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. I was just like, this is astonishing. And maybe I'm a mark for falling for that, but it's just too fucking cool to ignore. I can't ignore it. That was fucking crazy. So I've decided to rewatch Fallen Angels. I haven't watched it in a while. I've seen every Wong Kar-wai movie. I'm a huge fan. But he's one of those filmmakers who like I have like a very strong, all of my things about him are like strong feelings. I'm not great at articulate them. I had to write about My Blueberry Nights once. It was very hard because like I feel like I should have just like painted it or something. Like when I think of his work, I feel it's all feeling. I don't know how to make words happen for it. For the longest time, my favorite movie of his was Chungking Express, which is like the most accessible Wong Kar-wai film. I feel like you can put that in front of anybody and they'll really dig it. When I was younger, Tarantino put it out through his like Rolling Thunder Productions thing. So I worked at a video store and I got a VHS copy of it and I just fell in love with it. And then it took me years to get into the rest of his films. In the Mood for Love in particular, I watched that like 4 times before I was able to fully finish it. I could never make it past the first 15 minutes of the movie. I was like, I just don't get it. And then once I got it, I really got it, you know? So, but Fallen Angels was one I was kind of obsessed with. That I didn't see for a long time. And I just knew that it was sort of like a quasi sequel to Chungking. So I was like, I have to see this. And then when I finally watched it, it's just like, I don't know. I was like, this isn't as good. Whatever. You know, Chungking Express is 2 stories about like kind of like love. Like the first half of the movie is about I think it's Takeshi Kaneshiro is a guy whose girlfriend has left him and he's like really like heartbroken about it. And then the second part is about a cop who falls for a girl at like a carry out spot. And like the stories are kind of entwined. Wong Kar-wai like filmed, like he was working on Ashes of Time at the time, like this really big expensive like sword epic. And he just like took a break from that movie to shoot this crazy little French new wavy, just eclectic little spitfire of a movie, you know? And I guess one of the stories that was going to end up in Chungking, he thought it was too long. He jettisoned it to its own movie. So like Fallen Angels is also 2 stories. One is about a hitman and his silent partner. And she's like secretly obsessed with him and like in love with him. And they never see each other. And the second part of it is about like a mute ex-convict who just like goes on adventures kind of. But basically like Chungking is a very like kind of bright and like buoyant movie. It's very like effervescent. Fallen Angels is like the opposite of that. Like the entire movie takes place at night. You don't see the sun until like the last frame of the movie. And it feels much more about like the isolation of living in urban environments. There's probably a lot more like specific cultural stuff to China that like I just personally wouldn't understand because I'm not as dialed into like its political history and stuff like that. But the urban loneliness or whatever is actually pretty much more universal. So I can speak to that. And it really just captures that stuff in a way that's like, I think almost everyone I know always likes Fallen Angels less at first because it's not as fun. It's not as like bouncy. But the more you watch it, the more you're like, this is the better movie, I think almost. Like it speaks to some very uncomfortable feelings and truths and like it manages to express them in a very strange way. And the performances are all a little bit more challenging. Like they're a little bit weirder and more unhinged. But what they lack in sort of the like thematic cohesion, I guess you could say, of like Chungking, they make up for by just being really true. Do you know what I mean? Like they feel true. They feel really fucking real. You know, like they feel like this is real shit. Like there's all these little moments where I'm like, yeah, like I just fucking feel that. I feel that so deeply. And I know that's like, I don't know, like I'm not really articulating this very well, but if you've never seen Fallen Angels, I think you really should give it a chance. I'm much more interested in the first half of the film, the relationship between the contract killer and his handler who like handles everything for him and is like obsessed with him and like the weird romantic entanglement between them. And the other half is like also good, but I've actually been wanting to rewatch it for almost a year now. Basically, I've been wanting to rewatch it since I saw the last Halloween movie, and there's a shot that like very clearly is like evoking Fallen Angels, and I thought that was like, just made me remember like, oh, I gotta rewatch that. So I'm glad I did. That is also on Max. I think I streamed it off Max. I was like, it's fucking crazy. It's convenient. David Zaslav can't ruin everything, right? So the last movie I watched, I was told by a friend, by Kyle, my friend Kyle, that it was on HBO Max. I think he was just wrong because it's not, or if it was, it must have just gotten taken off. So I had to go on an old hard drive, and I found a different cut of the movie and decided to watch it. Last week, I think on the last episode, I mentioned that a friend told me to watch a movie that I really wanted to watch, but I didn't have time for it. I'd do it next week. And this is that movie. And it was, Kyle had told me that he watched Southland Tales for the first time, the Richard Kelly movie, his sophomore effort after Donnie Darko. And I've never seen it, ever. I've wanted to a lot, as evidenced by me having it on a hard drive and just never actually watching it. But so I pulled that up. I watched the Cannes cut. I think the theatrical version of Southland Tales, I think it's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. The Cannes cut's like 248 or something like that. And this is what they debuted at the Cannes Film Festival. And then the distributors were like, we can't fucking, what the hell was that? Sorry. I just heard like a body fall or something. They were like, we can't fucking distribute this movie. This is absurd. So like they recut it and stuff. And then that made it even worse. And it was a failure. But I watched the Cannes cut, and what a movie. Like, I don't know if I can say it's good, but like, I wrote some stuff in my notes that I kind of want to reference. Like once I was finished, I was like, I gotta see what my friends think about this. So I went to Letterboxd. My friend Dylan Roth, you guys know Dylan. Dylan had watched it, I guess, relatively recently, and said it's like if Hideo Kojima and Neil Breen made a movie together. He gave it like 2 stars. That's not wrong. Just a little mean, but it's not wrong. Josh Lewis, one of my favorite people on Letterboxd, says it's 2 hours and 40 minutes. Essentially, I'm paraphrasing. He said it's like 2 hours and 40 minutes of the end of Kiss Me Deadly, the Mickey Spillane movie. And there's a scene in here where someone's watching it, and so like obviously kind of an influence. And I sort of believe that's to be true. And then Jacob Knight, I don't know if you guys know Jacob Knight. He's a cool dude. One of my favorite writers. Referenced a quote from Jay Douglas, who used to be the SVP of acquisitions at Anchor Bay. And I referenced it earlier. He said, sometimes interesting is better than good. And like, that's Southland Tales to me. Like, it's so interesting that I don't care if it's good. This movie is so wild that Richard Kelly basically hasn't made a movie since. Like, when I was in high school, Donnie Darko was very popular. And I was a movie guy. So anyone that saw Donnie Darko would have to come up to me and be like, Dom, you love movies. Have you seen Donnie Darko? And I'd be like, no, I haven't seen it. And like, oh my God, you would love this movie. It is perfect for you. And I would resent the fuck out of that, just in general, because I finally watched it and I was like, not for me. I didn't like it. I watched Donnie Darko like 4 or 5 times. I watched it like the director's cut. I watched the theatrical cut. I watched it with Richard Kelly and Kevin Smith's commentary. Eventually, as I grew a little bit and got to like mood and tone and stuff more than like plot and character a little bit, like I liked the movie more. And I liked Donnie Darko enough, but I still never felt like it was as good as people said. And then he wrote Domino for Tony Scott. He made that movie The Box after this, but nothing otherwise. Like, the guy's just been like MIA, director jail. And I must say, I think Southland Tales is a worthy title to go to director jail for. Like, I picture Richard Kelly like being taken out of the arena like Stone Cold Steve Austin, like handcuffed, and just still being like, and that's the bottom line. Because it's just like he fucking killed it, kind of. I mean, he killed his career, and he also killed it. It's a very... Okay, look. Southland Tales. I'm just going to name the cast first. Justin Timberlake, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, Sarah Michelle Gellar, Wallace Shawn. In my notes, I wrote Bob Balaban, and just I looked at that, I was like, that was not Bob Balaban. That was Wallace Shawn. Sorry. Tangina from Poltergeist. I don't know her real name. Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. I can't remember his name either. John Larroquette, Nora Dunn, Sherry Auteur. I'm just gonna pause to say that I used to have the hugest crush on Sherry Auteur. I haven't seen her anything in forever, and then seeing her like back in like sort of the prime, I was like, oh yeah, Sherry Auteur is really really cute. And Amy Poehler, like a younger Amy Poehler's in it. Wood Harris. It's Sean William Scott. Sean William Scott's like the one, like the main character, and Bai Ling. And I think that's most of the important people. I might be forgetting somebody, but that's a lot for a movie, right? And it's basically the most 9/11 movie that's ever existed. Like, it's the most this movie was made in the wake of 9/11 ever. Like, ever. And it just deals with a lot of themes that are obviously still relevant today. Like, it's like this fucking fever dream of like Bush's America, W. Bush's America. It opens up with like, I don't know if I want to give away a lot of the plot, because like if you watch it cold, it's actually even more interesting. But like essentially, there's a future. It's like this movie came out in like 2006. It takes place in like 2008, and it's like there's a presidential election coming up. Someone, it implies, from the Middle East dropped nukes in Texas, so like that kind of changed it. Like they made like the Patriot Act like the super shredder of Patriot Act stuff, and they like now all law enforcement and all spy stuff is wrapped up together in like one big tent, which is like kind of how it, I guess, technically is, but like it's more, you know, overt. And then there's this like German company run by Bob, I keep wanting to say Bob Balaban. He's not in this movie. Wallace Shawn's character, who looks like I saw 7 reviews on Letterboxd that said he looked like he came out of David Lynch's Dune. It's like indisputable. That's what he looks like. He creates like this like water-based energy source, and there's this whole thing where The Rock is he plays a guy named Boxer Santoros. Everybody has names like this. This movie has the best names for characters outside of like Star Wars and Pacific Rim. Like those two are my golden standards for ridiculous fucking names. Now Southland Tales takes that crown. Boxer Santoros is a movie star who has amnesia, woke up in the desert, and came over to join Sarah Michelle Gellar, who plays a porn star named Kristen Now. They wrote a movie together about the apocalypse. They're trying to get funding for it. Will Sasso's in this movie too, I just remembered, sorry. And there's like this prophecy about how the world's going to end, and like Sean William Scott is one of 2 twin brothers, and like one of them impersonates the cop twin while working with this neo-Marxist underground group. John Lovitz is in this movie. Oh my god, I'm sorry, I almost completely forgot. John Lovitz is in this movie as like a crooked cop who looks like if Roy Batty was played by like late period William Peterson, like tail end of CSI William Peterson. But it's also John Lovitz, and he has like bleach blonde hair, and he's insane. It is like the best performance from John Lovitz, other than his part in The Wedding Singer when he's like, he's losing his mind and I'm reaping the benefits. That's the best actual John Lovitz performance, but this one's a close second. And there's a whole scene where like Amy Poehler and Wood Harris, who are neo-Marxists, are pretending to be like a couple having a domestic disturbance on like their wedding day to like frame some. It's a complicated plot, but that scene alone is so fucking funny. It's like, so I could not breathe. And then The Rock, it's like, remember, this is 2006, so he's like smaller. He's not bald, so he still has like that hairline. You remember? You guys remember that hairline? And he's actually like trying things. And this is like not long after like Be Cool or whatever. So he's like actually still doing things as an actor. It's, in my notes, I think I wrote, it's the most Bruce Campbellian Dwayne performance. Bruce Campbellian. It just feels very much like elastic, if that makes sense. Like he feels rubbery and like it's very open. Mandy Moore is in it too. Sorry, I just remembered that. It's an insane cast, and it's like a sci-fi movie. It's like a dark comedy. It's like a thriller. It's like all these things. It's so ambitious. I don't know that it fully works, but by the end of it, I didn't care, if that makes sense. By the end of it, I did not give a shit whether or not the plot held together. It was just so daring that I was like, I mean, to me now, Donnie Darko notwithstanding, Richard Kelly, someone needs to give him some money. Someone please just get together like $35 to $40 million and let's see what he wants to do next. It's been a long time. I'd love to see what's going on in his weird fucking brain. But yeah, Southland Tales. What a picture. Oh, Christopher Lambert is in this movie. I'm sorry, I just keep remembering people who are in the movie. And his part is so weird. Everyone's part is weird. Everyone is playing weirdly against type. John Larroquette's really funny in it. I mean, he's funny in lots of stuff. He's really funny in this. Wallace Shawn just fucking on a whole nother level. It's the one thing I thought Timberlake kind of narrates the movie, and I feel like he's the movie's one weak spot. But there is the scene where he's like doing a musical sequence set to a Killer song in like on a boardwalk. That's like pretty cool. Outside of that one scene, I remember thinking, man, this would have been a great role for Aaron Paul years later. Alas. Also, I think this is like the second movie I've seen relatively recently or in the last few years that has Timberlake as like this weird narrator. Because I think he narrates the last Woody Allen movie I watched. Not A Rainy Day in New York with Timothy Chalamet. The movie's fucking horrendous. Before that, he made a movie that mostly takes place on a beach with Justin Timberlake and Kate Winslet. And I think he uses Timberlake in a very similar way, which is weird. I just remember the movie sucked too, but Vittorio Storaro shot it, so it just looks gorgeous. It just looks like a fucking moving painting, but it's just fucking trash. Anyway, yeah, Timberlake, weakest part of the movie, but charming in his own way. And it just has... I think Dylan really nailed it. And Hideo Kojima and Neil Breen together is probably the most accurate way to describe this movie. Only he meant it kind of as like a pejorative thing. I actually think it's sort of a cool thing. I don't know. If you haven't seen Southland Tales, it feels like a movie you should give a chance. I definitely feel like I saw a lot of people log it like 7 years ago and hate it, and then relog it in the last year or two and be like, oh, never mind, I was wrong. This is a masterpiece. So I always love when that happens with movies. Yeah, okay. We're going to move on to questions now. We're going to do the Q&A part. So the first question, my man John Armstrong asks, question for next time. Sketch out a slow motion action scene set to an incongruous needle drop. An unambitious answer would be something like a climactic gunfight backed by Etta James at last. But you can do weirder. I believe in you. Thank you, John. I was thinking about this when I first looked at the question. And the first thing that came to mind is something I'm going to kind of share, because it's from like a short film I was writing a few years ago that I'm probably going to repurpose a lot of the story for something else. But it was a short, and it was about like a supervillain's henchman who falls for like a rival villainess and gets kind of manipulated into like helping her do a thing, and like it's all this stuff. It's sort of like a weird tortured. It's so fucking stupid. I don't know why I almost never share my ideas for like real things and ever, but whatever. You guys are on the pod. You guys are part of the family. In my notes for it was originally kind of wanted to be kind of like, what if Wong Kar-wai had to make a superhero movie, and like what would that look like? And it was like a 15-minute thing essentially. And there was this big climactic sequence that sort of was a flashback of a bunch of things that had happened in the narrative earlier, but from different perspectives, so you kind of see what was really going on. Yeah, it was one of those. But I envisioned it as being like all of those things would happen again, but in like a slow motion, and they would be set to Vanilla Fudge's You Keep Me Hanging On. And then the slow motion at different parts would like kind of speed ramp up to like the rhythm of the song, like the kind of the staccato thing, like that part. And that song popped up in a movie. I think it popped up in a Tarantino movie, and I was like, fuck, I guess I'm never gonna do this now. And also the stuff that I liked from that script, I'm keeping for a completely different story. There was some salvageable stuff in there that I'm not sharing, but. Yeah, it was like a sequence of just re-showing all of these like minor superhero action moments from this other perspective to show what was like really going on, like how he was conned, but in a way that was also like kind of charming. Like it was like showing these moments where she manipulated him and used him, but in a way that like there was no malice. You know, now that I realize it, I'm realizing that I was essentially trying to write like blue collar supervillain assistants who fall for each other like Max Cherry and Jackie Brown. I think that's what actually I was writing. So I'm glad I never made that because it's so original. But yeah, that was a song I really, 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 really wanted to use. And I knew it would be kind of like gimmicky and weird, but at the time I was like really into that idea. But so that's my answer to that. Fatira asks, what's the most recent major studio failure? Most recent major studio failure that was fun for you to celebrate its badness, either as a viewer or as a theater manager. Okay, I haven't seen a bad movie that I've enjoyed as a viewer in a while, but as a manager, I worked at a theater when we opened Cats, and when I got word that we were opening Cats, I was like, why are we opening Cats? This movie's not going to make any money. It's like, well, we already booked it. We have to do it. And we had the thing where like they had to have like a patch notes for Cats. Like they had to release another version that looked less sexual in certain parts, like the CG stuff. And I remember we had like a day and a half of playing the original version before we could swap it out for the new one that we had to download. And the only people coming to see it were just stoned teenagers. And they were just like coming to the box office like, do you have the OG version? Or you got like the patch notes? And I was like, we got the OG one for 2 more shows. And they're like, sick. And they loved it. Like they all just came in groups of like 5 or 6 in an empty auditorium to just get high and watch Cats. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. That's the right thing that should happen for this movie. Complete failure. But it was like everyone I interacted with, it was so entertaining because like people would come in and like, what's good this week? And I'm like, we opened Cats. And they're like, I'm not gonna fucking watch that. Like people sometimes go, oh, that's not for me, or maybe not. Maybe I'll see this. Maybe I'll come back later. Cats was the only bad movie where people were like, what? Fuck you. Like, are you serious? You really trying to say this shit to me? You want me to watch fucking Cats? I hope you die. People were like very adamant that like, no, I'm not gonna watch Cats. Fuck you. So that was a blast. That was like one of my last happy memories about my job. So next question. Iris asks, what are some movies that are really extraordinarily long that you like? I know you go on record as loving a good hour and 30-minute picture. I agree, honestly. See? Simpatico. But are there movies that you love that are like 3 hours plus, and then you feel it couldn't be shorter than that? Yeah, actually, I wrote a handful down. The Hateful Eight. The first 3 times I saw it, I was like, this should be shorter. This should be shorter. But then by the 4th time, I was like, no, it's kind of right. You know, RRR is a more recent one. That's a movie that like I don't imagine it being shorter. It works so well at 3 hours. Avatar: Way of Water. Malcolm X is very long. I don't know how you make that shorter, honestly. You kind of need that breadth. JFK, why make that shorter? I think if you make JFK any shorter, it becomes more incomprehensible. Like you need the space, the parts for it to breathe, you know? What else did I write down? I think those are the big ones. Like I'm open to long movies, you know what I mean? As long as it doesn't feel really long. Like Oppenheimer, that's a 3-hour movie that like I don't know how you'd cut it down. I don't know that you'd want to. So yeah. Next question. Channel Not Found asks, what is your relationship / history with brick and mortar rental stores, e.g. Blockbuster, Movie Gallery? So glad you asked this question. I never get to talk about this shit really. I dropped out of high school senior year. Long story. And I got a job. My friend John got me a job at Hollywood Video in Leesburg, Virginia. It was my first ever job. And I had open availability because I wasn't going to school. And everyone else that worked there was either like an adult and it was like their second job, or they were like a high school student and they could only work intermittently. So I was just there like every day. And within like 2 or 3 weeks, they made me like assistant store manager. The store manager at the time was a woman named Jen. She was very young. She was like 25. In retrospect, being 25 and running an entire store seemed like crazy to me, but I was like 18. And I just took to the job very well. Obviously, it's not a very hard job. And I love movies. So I would just be in there like all day. I worked almost every day. And it was actually kind of a fun job. It got stressful sometimes. Like I had to work alone on a lot of Friday nights and stuff back when people went to these damn things. And the people that used to run that store before Jen took it over were like essentially like doing like drugs at work and like refused to check in movies when they came back. So people would return movies and they would never get checked back in, and they would end up being found on shelf. So you'd return a movie and then 3 months later someone would check it out again, and that's when it would get scanned back in the system, and then you would like be on the hook for like 3 months of late fees. Essentially, this is back when late fees were still a thing. It was rough. So like I had to do a lot of work of just kind of like charming people who hated it, and for them to make them know like, no, it's new, it's like a new dawn, everything's cool now, we're a good store. But it was also right when Blockbuster did away with late fees and had, you know, all that weird like red tape of how you still got charged them, but they were called something else. And people would come in like, I'm not fucking paying this. Like, the Blockbuster's right up the street. And I'm like, yeah, if you take a left on 7, you just go straight down to the other, you know, like, yeah, then fucking go to Blockbuster. Fuck you. But I loved Hollywood Video. We had like a really cool selection of movies that was a little more diverse than what Blockbuster had at the time. And we had the Video Hound guide, the big book of home releases that Leonard Maltin, I think, probably maintained. And on my downtime at work, I would just go through and read it and just make lists of movies I'd never seen. And like every day I would rent 3 movies. You could rent three at a time and go home. I watched 3 movies. I bring them back. I'd do that. Like, so I watched so many. I worked there essentially from like the beginning of the year through to like the summer or something. I don't remember. It was like 4 or 5 months, maybe 6 months, I guess. And that 6-month period, I watched so many movies, man. There was like, we had to watch like this like loop tape thing you would put on that was just like the ads of like what's playing and all the deals and stuff. And I would never play it if I could avoid it. Like, unless I knew like someone was going to do like a secret shop or something, I would just play movies. Like, which there's some movies you can play in a store and some you can't. So like I watched Super Size Me in the store one day. I watched Hitchcock's Notorious, and I forgot about how loud the sound system in the store was. So like the score like scared me random times of my day. But this was like my first job. I learned a lot. I liked it. I had a bunch of my friends worked there. There was sort of a local economy between all the different stores in our shopping center. So like, you know, we gave out free rentals and I'll let people borrow movies before they fully were released. And then the guys at like Moe's would give us free burritos and shit like that or whatever. One day I was training this kid. He was the younger brother of a guy I went to school with. His name was Evan. I sincerely doubt Evan's listening to this podcast, but I hope you're having a good day, Evan. You're a nice guy. But he was very naive at the time. He was like kind of coming out of his shell, and he was trying to do a good job. He was trying to be like a good employee. And the week Be Cool hit DVD. We'd get movies like a week before they were going on the shelf or whatever. The manager of Moe's, who was kind of this like stocky, like kind of aggressive Italian guy, came over and was like, yeah, I want to Be Cool. And Evan was like, oh, I'm sorry, sir, that doesn't come out till Tuesday. And I was over doing some paperwork at the end of the counter, and the guy was like, Dom, we got a problem over here? I was like, what's going on, man? It's like, nothing's going on. I'm just trying to Be Cool, and this guy's giving me the fucking runaround. And just remembering it, he really talked to me like fucking Tony Soprano. Because it was like, if I didn't give him this movie, like we weren't going to get free fucking chips and queso and shit. Like, you know what I mean? I was going to be fucking up the employee back scratching economy. So I had to tell Evan, I was like, Evan, just give him the movie. He was like, but Tom, we're going to, I was like, you have to give him the fucking movie, please. And he handed it over. And he was like, am I going to get written up? Am I going to get in trouble? And I was like, nah, dude, this is just, look, this is how we do shit around here, right? Like, you know, don't be a fucking narc. It was one of my favorite things that happened at that store, was always having to like grease people's palms and shit. A very funny thing that happened to me at that store is I worked a lot of shifts completely by myself, and we were directly next to a hair salon. And one day I watched Tim Burton's Batman on the TV while I was doing like inventory. And when they got to the credits and Scandalous came on with Prince, I was singing along to Scandalous, like belting it out. Like I'm the only person in the store during the day. No one's fucking coming in. I have a horrible singing voice. My voice is, I mean, some of you seem to like my speaking voice, but I cannot sing. I have no aptitude for it whatsoever. It's embarrassing. But I was just hitting that falsetto and probably hurting birds nearby. And there's a girl who worked at the salon who would sometimes come over to get snacks and stuff from us because we had candy and sodas. And she came over and just kind of gave me like these funny looks the whole time. And I was like, this is kind of weird. And then afterwards, someone later told me, it was like, yeah, because of the acoustics, like anything in here is like, they can hear it in the salon very loudly. So like she could just hear me singing that the whole time. And I think just only came over to get something to drink to see how fucking stupid I looked. So that was cute. But that was a very important job to me. I miss working the thing I like about working in a video store. I've worked in movie theaters for years. People want to watch a good movie. Like, what's a good movie? I'm like, there are weeks we don't have any good movies. There are weeks where we're not playing anything that I would recommend. In a video store, you got so many options. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's like, what do you like? You know, like, have you seen this? If you haven't seen this, have you seen this? Like, you could really kind of spend some time with someone, and you got to know people's taste. There were these guys. There was this couple. It was like a guy and a girl, and I didn't know they were a couple at first. And then maybe they weren't a couple at first, but they both would always come in and rent what we called fourth shelf titles at Hollywood Video. On the walls around the store is all the new releases, and then all the old stuff was in the center. Not every store did that, but I know we did. And the fourth shelf, you would have these small titles that you would only get a couple of copies of, and they were generally speaking like Asylum type stuff. You know what I mean? Like new Steven Seagal movies in 2005. You know, if Transformers was coming out, we'd have Transmorphers, like that type of stuff. You know what I mean? And these people would this man and this woman would exclusively rent those movies. And they'd be like, what have you heard? And I'm like, I haven't heard a fucking thing about these movies. They haven't screened these for the press. These aren't real movies, but they liked them. And one day I remember them coming in together, getting these shitty movies together. And I was like, have they always been a couple? Or did they meet at the fourth shelf? I'll never know. I used to have a guy who would come in and was like, what's a good action movie? And I would like tell him what was good and what we had available and what was checked out. And he would never believe me. He would want to like look behind the counter. He was like, anything else come in? And I was like, nothing has come in since you walked in the store, man. I was like, you sure? Like, yes, I'm fucking sure. He said I was holding out on him. Like, I know you're holding out on a Wesley Snipes movie or something, man. I'm like, bro, I'm not. And then of course, my absolute favorite type of person, we had this one guy who called and he was like, hey, do you guys have any R-rated movies? And I was like, we have a lot of movies that are rated R. It's a very common rating for movies. And he's like, no, but like specifically R-rated movies. And I'm like, oh, he's asking about porn. He doesn't know how that works. And I was like, hey, I don't know how to say this to you, but like, we don't have porn. Like, we have movies that have nudity and sex in them, but we don't have a section for them. We don't carry anything hardcore. This isn't a store for real beaters. Okay, this is just like the imitation stuff. This is the oat milk latte of erotica. And that guy came into the store later and I recognized his voice, and he got like a copy of like a movie about the Kama Sutra. And he was like kind of giving me like this look, like, oh, this looks like fun. And I was like, just so you know, this is not pornography. And he was like, I know that. That's not what I'm looking for. I was like, dude, you walked in the store and made a beeline for the fucking Kama Sutra. Like, I know what's up, man. I'm not judging you. I'm just saying this is not, there's no penetration in this, dog. This isn't real shit. And sure enough, he went home and then he came back and called and tried to get like a refund. He was like, I didn't like this movie. It wasn't what I thought it was going to be. I was like, motherfucker, I told you what it was going to be. So I just pictured that guy going home and just like limp and disappointed and like, you loser, I fucking warned you. But yeah, one of the low key, maybe my favorite job. I miss it the most, which is very strange, obviously, because I got paid nothing and I didn't go anywhere with it, but whatever. Bring back video stores. They were great. Final question of the episode. We've gone a little bit long. Susan asks a question about this for the next pod. Who makes money from concessions? Is it the individual theaters if they are associated with a brand like AMC or Regal? Is that who makes the money? A semi-related question. Are there many independent theaters left? If so, do you have any recommendations in the Northern Virginia, DC area? I am uniquely qualified to answer all these questions. So, concession sales are the lifeblood of the movie theater, okay? When you sell tickets to a movie, the theater keeps it's like a little less than half generally of the ticket sales. So I think it's like 60-40 split. It depends on the movie. Movies have different splits. Some studios will make deals where if you play a movie longer, like past the first 3 weeks, you keep a higher percentage of the ticket sales as it goes along. So every now and then you get a movie that like is a real hitter and has legs, and that's really great because you keep more and more of the money as it goes on. Do you know what I mean? Whereas like like you're Disney, the fucking mafia of the entertainment industry. Like you can negotiate very favorable terms for yourself. Because what am I going to do? Not play the new Marvel movie, But concessions is where it's all at, man. Like we sell the food to everybody, and like obviously they're not at fair pricing necessarily. A large popcorn could be $10, and then like a 35 pound of bag of popcorn seed can be like $40 or something, and that can make like 1,000 large popcorns or whatever. I'm not thinking about the real math right now, but there's a crazy markup. You're always looking to have really like anything that I look to try to sell, I have to look at whatever the cost is. It's like I probably have to charge 4 times whatever this is to make money for us, like for our margins. So I mean, it sucks. I get that people hate it. I understand why people are like, this isn't fair. I'm gonna sneak in food, and like, whatever, do you? Just don't leave wrappers. I hate when people sneak in food and then I have to pick up stuff that I know we don't carry. I'm like, why the fuck is there an empty Michelob Ultra in here? What the fuck is wrong with you? But yeah, so the thing about brands is like essentially every chain is its own thing. So like AMC has a bunch of theaters in the country that they're like the company. It's not like franchisees like with Chick-fil-A or something like that. Ditto Regal. They're both, I think, AMC's I think owned by like a Chinese company, and then I think Regal's owned by a European one. And there are still independent theaters. There's not as many of them as there used to be. I worked at an independent theater back in like 2009, and like around 2011 or 2012, we started noticing that the type of movies that would be big movies for the independent specialty circuit were starting to get programmed at mainstream theaters at higher frequency. So like there was a Regal up the street from us, and like sometimes they would get the movies that were our big movies, and it's like, fuck, we don't have exclusivity on these anymore. People are going to go to the big theater if they can. I mean, some people would be like, I'm here to support you guys. We love you guys. And I'm like, thank you. But there's not enough of you. So they still exist. In the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, the only true independent theater left is the Avalon in DC, which is a nonprofit. They're a very small theater. They play a lot of really small pictures and stuff. I've never watched a movie at the Avalon. I met the guy that runs it a handful of times because we had to share prints with each other over the years. You don't want to hire a courier. It's like, dude, can I just come get this movie from you? Yeah, bro, that's fine. The AFI Silver in Silver Spring is like kind of like an independent film theater, but like that's not really, they don't really operate like one. I don't want to get into that, but if you want to see like independent films, they tend to play them. And what else? The Angelica Mosaic in Fairfax. I guess technically that's like an indie theater. I think that's still there. I've never seen a movie at the Mosaic, but I know they exist. They also have one in a location in DC, the Union Market Pop-Up, which I personally don't call a movie theater because it's like a warehouse that has screens in it, but whatever. Oops. To me, the theater that was always like the independent theater in the area was East Street Cinema, downtown, 555 11th Street Northwest. A block or two from the Metro Center station on the Red Line. A block over from where they shot Lincoln. I have a lot of memories about that theater. There's a lot of things about it that are very special to me to this day. But I guess I can still recommend it as a place to go see movies. The only problem with that theater is it hasn't been renovated in years, and it desperately needs it. So like if you can forgive not having recliners and some of the newer amenities, it's still a beautiful theater, and there's still good times to be had there. Okay. I think that does it for us this week. Thank you guys for listening. This one got a little long again. I don't really know what's a fair length for a podcast. I think I've just been trying to go with the rule of like, if I run out of stuff, if it feels like I'm going on too long, I should stop. And I think we're doing okay. So if you're watching the YouTube version of this, or if you're watching my face right now, if you like this, give it a thumbs up. If you loved it, please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the bell icon to get notifications whenever I put out new videos. And if you're listening to the audio version, if you're on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever podcast platforms, subscribe, drop me a review, give me a rating, or share it with your friends. Tell people like about how cool I am and stuff. Please don't gatekeep me. And as always, if you want to ask questions for the next episode, you can ask in the comments of this YouTube video. You can in the comments of any of my YouTube videos. You can ask me on fucking Blue Sky, Twitter, email me at armchair@auteur@gmail.com. Send a pigeon my way. If a pigeon walks up to me and is like, "Man, Dom, what do you think about Martin Scorsese?" And then I'll know it's one of you guys. Yeah, you know, the whole shebang. So thank you again for listening. I love you guys. I really appreciate if you're listening to this, supporting this podcast. It's like my favorite thing that's happening in my life at the moment, which sounds a little bit corny and lame, but I really enjoy it, and I hope you guys enjoy it too. So thank you. I'll see you here. You'll hear me. We'll talk in the next one. Bye.